I never imagined that one day I would be the one to tell a story like this. I always believed that I was on the right path, that the life of a priest was safe and guided by the hand of God. My life had been completely focused on serving others. Since I was young I felt the divine call. People came to me in search of advice and consolation, and I offered them the teachings of faith with all my heart. I spoke to them about the love of God, salvation and the divine purpose of our lives. I lived under the belief that by following the path of Christ my destiny was sealed. However, the belief, that unwavering faith that had accompanied me for so long was put to the test. One night at the most unexpected moment, it was late and after a long day of masses and prayers I fell exhausted into my bed. My body had been at its limit but my soul felt at peace, confident in the work I had done. While I closed my eyes thinking about the next mission I would have, the next day something strange happened. I felt a sudden pain in my chest, so intense that I couldn't help but scream, but my voice faded away. My hands tried to grab the air for support, but it was all in vain. The pain intensified and I couldn't do anything else. I fell into an abyss of darkness. The last thing I remember is that feeling of disconnection, as if my soul had begun to detach from my body. My heartbeat completely stopped and then everything faded away. I lost consciousness. I didn't feel fear, only a strange calm. I was dreaming. Was this what happened when someone died? I didn't know, but something told me that I was no longer in my body. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a completely unknown place. The air was dense and heavy, as if I couldn't breathe normally. My body was still there, but something was different. I didn't feel the heaviness of my being. There was no pain, only a cold emptiness that invaded it. My mind was full of confusion. I didn't know if he was dead or if he had simply fallen into a deep sleep. I looked around me looking for some sign, but there was nothing familiar. The silence was absolute, a silence that enveloped and suffocated me, as if everything I knew no longer existed. I began to walk, although I didn't know where. Each step I took I felt empty, as if I were going through an endless place. My thoughts were a whirlwind. Where was I? Why was I here? I had always lived according to the teachings of Christ. I had always helped others. I had given my life in service to God. I did not understand how could I be in this place surrounded by darkness. Time seemed not to exist. Each step took me to a longer, darker tunnel. I felt the anguish beginning to take over me. The memories of my life, of my mission, began to come back with force. I thought of my family, my friends, my parishioners, but above all I thought of my years of service to God. I had always considered myself a good man, a man of faith, but now in this desolate place I questioned if I had really fulfilled my purpose. Suddenly I saw something in the distance. It was a figure, something that moved among the shadows. At first I thought it was a product of my mind, but as I got closer I saw that it was a person. My heart began to beat faster. Who could be there with me? What could be trapped in this place? As the figure came closer my mind was shocked. It was him, Leonardo DiCaprio, the actor we all knew. The man who had been acclaimed for his talent, admired by millions of people, was there in hell, as if he was trapped in a place he could not escape. My heart stopped for an instant. How could it be possible? He was still alive. How could he be there? Why was his soul trapped in this place of torment and eternal suffering? Fear and confusion took hold of me. I looked into his eyes, empty of hope, lost in an abyss from which he seemed unable to escape. I approached slowly, but something stopped me. I could not get closer. A presence, a different energy made me stop. It was at that moment when I heard a deep voice, serene and full of authority. No doubt that voice came from above, the voice of Jesus. "Do you recognize him, my son?" asked the voice. The sound of those words shook me. I turned slowly, and there before me was the glorious figure of Jesus. His presence filled the entire space, dazzling but also filled with a sadness that seemed to pervade all. I could not understand what I saw. Why was he here? Why was he in this place of suffering? No, it cannot be. Can you, murmured, be able to believe what I saw? He is alive. Why is he here? What has he done to get to this place? Jesus looked at me with infinite compassion, as if he understood my confusion. "This man," said, pointing at DiCaprio, "he has sold his soul and life. He sought fame, power and success, but abandoned the principles of truth. His soul is condemned. although his time on earth has not yet come. When his life ends he will come here to this place. My eyes filled with tears. I could not understand how someone so admired with so much success could be destined for this place. What had he done wrong? Why was his soul so lost? Jesus continued with a firm voice but full of sadness, "My son, your mission is not over. You have to go and preach. You have to tell those who seek fame, power and wealth that there is a price to pay, that the path of vanity leads to perdition, not to sell their soul for the pleasures of the earth, because true glory is in heaven, and that glory is achieved through humility, love and service to others." I stayed in silence, unable to articulate a word. The vision of Jesus and the image of DiCaprio trapped in that place of suffering were engraved in my mind. My heart began to beat strongly, but now with a mission. I had to warn the living about the price they would pay for following the path of selfishness and vanity. Jesus had given me a mission and I could not fail. The light of Jesus began to fade, but his voice still resonated in my heart. "Remember, my son, that true power is not found in fame or money. True power is found in love, in serving others, in living with humility and faith." And so I found myself again in that dark abyss, but with a renewed purpose. I could not allow more people like Leonardo to follow the path of selfishness. I had to preach the truth, warn them about the consequences of their choices. From that moment on, my life would no longer be the same. My mission was clear, and although I didn't know how I was going to do it, I knew I couldn't rest until I had done it. The place around me was still an absolute void, but now something had changed inside me. My heart was beating strongly, not only because of the fear that still invaded me, but also because of a growing conviction that the mission that Jesus had given me had to be fulfilled. I could not ignore the responsibility that now weighed on my shoulders. The purpose of my existence had changed at that very moment. In that dark and disconcerting place, I knew that if I got out of there my life would be different. The silence that surrounded me was heavier than ever, and I realized that I was no longer walking alone. As I walked through the dark corridors of hell, I began to see other souls. Each one of them was trapped in an endless darkness. Some seemed to be in eternal torment, screaming, lamenting about their fate. Others simply wandered like aimless shadows consumed. There was so much suffering in that place that I could not process it all. I felt overwhelmed, but once again that presence called me. The presence of Jesus appeared in front of me like a bright light, so bright that the darkness itself seemed to fade. For a moment, however, his gaze remained sad, laden with sorrow for the suffering that was before him. "What you see here is the result of the decisions of those who lived only for themselves," he told me with a calm that contrasted with the pain. In his words, "Every soul you find here was led by its own selfish desires. They sought earthly glory without understanding that true glory is in serving others." His voice resonated in my chest like an echo I could not ignore. Not only did I see the tormented souls, but I felt their pain, their remorse. Hell was not just a physical place, but a space where souls carried their guilt and their mistakes, a space of eternal repentance. "Why have you brought me here, Lord?" I asked him, feeling small and vulnerable in his presence. "I have always tried to be faithful, always I preached your word. Why am I here? What have I done wrong?" Jesus looked at me with eyes full of compassion but also of sadness. "It is not that you have done something wrong, Gabriel. The fact of being here is not a punishment for you but a calling. You have been chosen to see what many do not want to see. The purpose of your life is to help save those souls that are lost in the darkness." His words hit me hard. I had never thought that my life, so dedicated to serving God, could have such a great purpose. I felt small but also full of a responsibility. "It is your mission to go to earth and warn those who seek power and fame at any price," continued Jesus. "Don't let them follow the path that leads to this place. Don't sell your souls for things that come with time. True life is in love, compassion, humility. That is the path you must follow." I remained silent, meditating on what he was telling me. Hell was not just a place of physical torment, but a reflection of the decisions and lives that had strayed from the right path. Each soul trapped there had chosen its destiny, and that destiny was the result of its selfishness and its wrong decisions. As I thought about all this, something caught my attention. In the darkest corner of hell, it was a figure that moved slowly through the shadows. At first I thought it was another lost soul, but as I got closer, I could see that it was not just any shadow. It was a human figure, clearly distinguishable from the others. My heart raced. and my mind was filled with questions. It was another soul known, this time the soul of someone who had been recognized in life for his influence and his power. I could not believe what I saw before me, was the soul of a man who had never imagined finding here, the soul of a corrupt politician, one of the most powerful men on earth, who had fallen into greed, selfishness and abuse of power. He had been a figure admired by many, but everyone knew that his ambition had no limits. I approached cautiously, not knowing what to do. The figure, upon realizing my presence, looked up and stared at me. His gaze was empty, completely lost, as if he had abandoned all hope. "What are you doing here?" I asked him without knowing if my voice would reach him. "Why are you here?" The soul of the politician who had been a powerful figure in life sighed deeply. His face reflected despair and regret. "I sold my soul for power, for wealth, for the control," answered with a trembling voice. "I thought all that would make me happy, but now I see it. Now I know I have lost everything that really matters." The scene left me speechless. His soul was trapped in eternal suffering, and although his repentance was evident, it was too late for him. The light of redemption no longer reached his heart. He was condemned to wander in the darkness like so many other souls trapped there. I looked again at Jesus, searching for answers, searching for comfort. He looked at me with a serene sadness, and in his eyes I saw the same sorrow for the souls lost, for those who had chosen the wrong path. "What can I do for them?" I asked him, feeling an urgency to help, to save. "There is no hope for them." Jesus sighed and shook his head. "Hope is in those who still have life. You cannot save those who have already departed, but you can save those who are still on earth. That is your mission, Gabriel. Go and preach the truth. Let them know that the path to salvation is through love, sacrifice, and humility." I stood there silently absorbing the words of Jesus. It was a monumental mission, a task that would require all my faith and determination, but I knew I could not fail the opportunity to save the souls that still walked the earth. It was the only thing I could do. "Go, my son," Jesus said with a smile full of hope. "Do not fear, for I will be with you." With those words, a feeling of peace began to fill my being. The pain, the fear, the confusion, everything began to fade away. Jesus was no longer alone. He was with me, and with that renewed strength, I prepared to return to the world of the living with a clear mission, to preach the truth, to warn of the consequences of greed, vanity, and selfishness, and to show the true path to salvation. I could not fail. When the light of Jesus disappeared, and everything began to fade away before me, I felt as if the weight of the world had been given to me all at once. At that very moment, I felt as if the weight of the world had been given to me all at once. That darkness enveloped me again. A strange feeling of peace began to invade my being. I did not understand how, but something inside me knew that I had changed, that I was no longer the same man who had arrived there. With a sudden movement, the dark and empty space that surrounded me began to disintegrate. The fog that had covered my eyes cleared, and slowly my vision was regaining its clarity. In the blink of an eye, the cold and despair of hell disappeared, and what was left was a completely different environment. My room. I was in my bed, breathing deeply, feeling the beat of my heart, that unmistakable sign that I was still alive. I did not know if seconds had passed, minutes or hours. The only thing I knew was that something deeply transformative had happened. But how could I explain what I had experienced, how I could share the truth with the world when even I myself did not fully understand what had just happened to me? Jesus' mission weighed now on my shoulders like an immense burden, but it also filled me with a determination I had not known before. I slowly stood up with shaking hands, trying to hold on to something I had experienced. Each step I took seemed heavier than the previous. My legs, although physical, felt as if they were made of lead, but in my mind the images of hell were still as vivid as before. The lost souls, the screams of despair, the eternal suffering of those who had chosen the wrong path, everything was burned into my heart. I headed towards the church, my usual place, the place where so many times I had taken refuge. When entering the small chapel, the empty altar greeted me with its solemn silence. I knelt down and began to pray. The words did not come out of my lips, but my soul was screaming for answers. How could I share what I had experienced? How could I warn people about what was coming without being taken for crazy? I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to do something. I had to act. Days went by, but I couldn't find peace. Visions of hell continued to haunt my mind. I couldn't get rid of the image of Leonardo DiCaprio trapped there, condemned by his own decisions. I remembered his face full of regret, the deep despair in his eyes. He, like so many others, had sold his soul in search of fame and power, but how many more would be in the same situation without knowing? One afternoon while walking through the streets, I came across a group of young people talking about DiCaprio's latest movie. They were excited, praising his talent, his success, his life of luxury. Something in me broke. Hearing his words, I thought of everything I had seen, everything I had lived, and I realized that these people, like so many others, were completely blinded by the superficiality of fame. They were chasing something empty, something that could not save their souls. The mission of Jesus began to take shape in my heart. I had to warn all those who lived only for themselves, those who put their faith in money, fame and power. It did not matter if they were rich or poor, famous or anonymous. What really mattered was the soul, the purity of the heart, the goodness that each one could offer to the world. But at the same time I knew that my task would not be easy. Those who sought fame and power would not want to listen to me. All those who fed on ego and vanity would see my words as something ridiculous, as an empty warning. How to convince someone that their soul was in danger when all they saw was their success and their material achievements? How to convince a society that idolized the at any cost that they were walking towards perdition? One day as I walked through the square, I met a man whom I knew well. He was a former parishioner, someone who had been very close to me in the first years of my priesthood. Now, however, his life had taken a completely different path. He had left the faith and had given himself over to business, to power and influence. I saw him with an arrogant look, as if the whole world was at his feet. Success had corrupted him. "Father Gabriel, how are you?" He greeted me with a smile of superiority. "Even in those things of the church I have been busy reaching goals. The world is mine now. I don't know how I achieved it, but everything is going wonderfully." His attitude made me think of everything I had witnessed in hell. That man, like so many others, thought that his earthly success protected him from any evil, but he did not know what was really at stake. He did not understand that his soul was in danger. I approached him cautiously, but my words came out with force, as if my soul could not keep quiet any longer. "What you have achieved in this life, it is not what really matters," I told him, trying to remain calm. "You have to understand that the price of vanity is to jump. You are going to sell your soul for success, for power, for fame. You cannot ignore what is really at stake." The man looked at me with disdain, as if my words were a simple meaningless murmur. "You too, father, with those outdated ideas. The world is changing and I am taking advantage of the opportunities it offers me. If you do not understand, that is your problem." His answer hurt me deeply, but it also reinforced my mission. I could not stay silent. I knew that my fight would be long, that my words would fall on deaf ears, but I could not stop trying. I could not allow more people to follow the same path as those condemned in hell. If I could save just one soul, then I would have fulfilled my mission. Day after day I shared what I had seen. I spoke with those who listened, trying to open their eyes to the truth. I told them about lost souls, about the price they paid to follow their selfish desires. Some people listened attentively, others mocked, and others simply ignored me. But despite the indifference, I kept going. I knew that every word I said was a seed planted in someone's heart, even though they didn't know it. At the time, as I continued on my mission, something inside me began to change. My faith strengthened, but I also understood that my journey was far from over. Jesus had shown me hell, but he had also shown me the path to redemption. My task was to teach others what I had learned, that love and sacrifice were the true riches, that ego and vanity only lead to perdition. As time went on, I began to see changes in the people around me. Some began to reflect on their lives, to question their decisions, and to look for something beyond the material. Others, however, remained blind to the truth, but I knew that my mission was not to force change, but simply to plant the seed of in their hearts. I knew that not all would be saved, but as long as a soul could find the path to the light, my work would have been worth it. And even if my body was on earth, my soul was still linked to that deep experience, to that vision that had been revealed to me. The battle for redemption continued, and I would continue to fight until the end. Despite all the challenges, something inside me that was on the right path. As the weeks went by, I began to notice changes in some of the people I spoke to, began to reflect on the decisions they were making. Some even moved away from materialistic lives looking for something deeper and truer. That transformation gave me strength to keep going, even when the resistance seemed unsustainable. I knew that every soul saved would be worth it, although the road was long and arduous. However, on the other hand, the challenges did not cease. The world around me was still mired in a constant search for power and status. How could I fight against that system? How could I convince those who were so blinded by the glories of material life that they were on a path to perdition? The weight of what Jesus had given me became more evident every day, and although I began to make a difference in some lives, the vastness of humanity seemed so distant, so immune to the truth. I found myself lost in my thoughts, questioning if someday the change would be enough. It was then that one night while praying I heard a soft voice almost whispering. It was not the voice of Jesus, but yet a presence that I recognized. I looked around and there was in front of me the man I would never expect to meet, Leonardo DiCaprio, or rather his soul. Now he knew what he had done. The price he had paid for his fame and success. His soul lost in the shadows of hell came to remind me something crucial: the power of vanity and the price. The relentless search for recognition. He looked at me with eyes that carried a deep, "Don't make the same mistakes," he whispered. "Warn the others before it's too late."